Yo, this is Alup. You got pretty big balls to watch Thorin's YouTube videos.
Team Liquid have won IEM Chicago in absolutely ridiculous fashion. They would have completed the Grand Slam at this point in time for Season 2 if they hadn't have won in Cologne. Obviously, famously, everyone knew Astralis wasn't attending. But since they already won the Grand Slam at the last event, well, 2 events ago because there was Blast LA, if you call that an event, they now start the next Grand Slam. And guess what? They're one event along the way to winning the next Grand Slam. Hence why, actually, for Season 3, the rules got changed where, yes, you have to win 4 tournaments out of 10, but you have to win one of the specific designated, like, big events. You can't just win any old event. So my joke that I made on Twitter is, now Team Liquid are even fucking up the Intel Grand Slam for every other team, because every other team out there, remember that famous story I always cite, where when the Grand Slam was announced, and at the time Astralis were like number 3 or number 4, Dupree famously said, no one's going to win that $1 million. Well, in theory, no one was supposed to, and after Astralis, well, no one was ever meant to win again except maybe Astralis. So the idea is, if they keep winning the Grand Slam, if Team Liquid somehow now goes on and wins a second Grand Slam, they're going to make the rules even harder for Season 3, aren't they? They're going to make it like, Season 4 now, it'd be even impossible. So my joke is, like, eventually you'll just have to win all 10 events in a row to win the Grand Slam, because Intel gets sick of giving the $1 million away. But that's just a joke to emphasize the point of how dominantly Team Liquid won this event. Because this is a tournament in which, yes, you didn't have Astralis. Yes, you didn't have Na'Vi. But you know what? You had ENCE, you had Vitality. They are the number 3 teams in the world. So look at this tournament where they played both of those teams. They only lost 1 map in the entire tournament. They played 10 maps in total and they lost 1. And that was in their series against G2, the team that they played in the best of 5 EPL Season 9 finals and won 3-1 against. They lost us to opener to G2, obviously a fabulous map for G2. Fairly close series overall as well. G2 had their chances over the first 2 maps. So actually, the hope I have here is that maybe G2, after seeing that match in the group and then the final at EPL, hopefully they can actually come on and become the rival to Team Liquid. Not a rival in terms of winning events. G2's probably not going to do that. But just directly when they play them, they can be a team that can push them, that can take them to the limit. Because every great team needs one in order to keep the casual fans on side. Otherwise, you get what happened with the Astralis guys last year, where even though watching them as an aficionado of CS is amazing, and there are feats they are accomplishing incredible, and they're still having great matches that they win, because not enough opponents can beat them and really challenge them, casual fans are going to call it boring, because to them that's boring. There's not enough excitement, there's not enough diversity of winners, etc. Like, these are things that casual fans care about. So just as when SK was number 1 in 2017, you had the G2 lineup that could stop them there. Well, obviously that G2 lineup was still technically like an elite or bordering an elite team who won tournaments themselves. This G2 lineup doesn't look like that. So the contrast I would give would be when Fnatic was number 1 and they had their era, the team actually that most commonly would beat them, aside from TSM, who obviously was their direct rival and could win events, they had a kind of a kryptonite who were a lower level team and weren't going to win events. And it was obviously Existence's Titan, where it was when he had KennyS and Kaylee, they were beating them outright. When he lost Kaylee and they were an underpowered team, but then KennyS was the best player in the whole world at the time, the best player maybe we'd ever seen, they could beat them. They could still beat them on many occasions, and indeed did, and took them close many, many times. So I think it would be cool if G2 somehow develops into that type of a squad against them. So Team Liquid played 10 maps at the tournament. They won 9 of them. Of the 9 maps, 4 of them were absolute stomps. 3 of them were convincing wins. 2 of them were close wins, and 1 was the one that they lost. So that was the 10 maps. They easily beat the new Envy lineup. Not a particularly good team, doesn't really matter. They crushed Vitality, who, remember, are the number 2 team in the world. And the context there is not only did they crush them, scoreboard doesn't say they did, 16-11, 16-9, but in the context that those are Vitality's 2 best maps that were being played in that 2-0, that is a crushing, actually. That is convincing. Because you know what? When you play your 2 best maps in a series over and over again, as Vitality has done, you're supposed to sometimes win one of those series because they're your best maps as well. Maybe you have a great day and you win that time, especially if one of them's dust too. You're supposed to win it eventually. It's actually one of the lower rated win rate maps for Team Liquid, even though they're godlike on it, because it's such a variable map, except apparently when Team Liquid plays Vitality on this map. So you look at it, like I say, in theory, Vitality's supposed to sometimes get a win here like they did the first time they played. But you know what? That theory doesn't always work out, because that's exactly the scenario that last year's number 1 and number 2 were in, where Team Liquid was number 2, Astralis was number 1. The problem was Astralis had a slightly larger map pool, and their map pool completely covered Team Liquid's map pool. And as a result, Team Liquid ended up losing all those matches. They occasionally won a map, but that's it. Otherwise, they just lost all those matches, and it could go the other way. You could also lose them all because you're also getting your best maps, but they're also your opponent's best maps, and they're a better team than you. So I kind of feel like there's a similar scenario, and that Vitality is going to end up being like the Team Liquid to Astralis, because, yeah, they won the first meeting that they had, but look where that meeting was. It was at CS Summit. Well, guess what? When you're at CS Summit, it's more of a... I know it's not just in that house anymore, but it is more of a chill event. It's not a massive stage environment. It's not a prestigious tournament. It's not something that, like, you're going to worry about for the rest of your career. And since it was the first time the two teams had played on LAN, my theory, actually, is that when you play someone like a ZywOo, or Simple when he's in Na'Vi, or Nico when he's in Mouse Sports, the first time you play a super godlike, hard carry, solo carry player like that, I think it takes a little bit of time to feel that out, to know where his tendencies are, where his sweet spots are, what the kind of areas you can pressure him are, and kind of sense how to play against him and sometimes away from him. Famously, when Nico was in Mouse Spots, there were maps, Cash is a good example, where you can rotate quickly his T between the sites, where when people found out what site Nico played as CT, they would sometimes just rotate to the other site and say, fuck it. The other players are at the other site, and if Nico could win a 1v4, tip your hat to him. So when Simple's been in Na'Vi, I know some of the players behind the scenes think, even though, yeah, he's unbelievably godlike, they think you can kind of sense where he's going to be on the map, and you can't stop him, but you can at least kind of know where to funnel the others or where to attack them, and they think that's part of why you can beat Na'Vi, even if you can't directly beat Simple head-to-head. So I'm looking for that, because obviously Vitality is the second best team in the world. They should be contending with Team Liquid for these titles, but you know what? At the moment, this matchup isn't good for them. They can't do shit against the firepower Liquid, because they've only got ZywOo on their team at the moment. Then you've got the whole angle of the map pool. They're completely covered by the Team Liquid guys at the moment. It's a tough one there. Then add in that Team Liquid wins all the 4 spies seemingly, win tons of clutches. It feels unfair to play against them. I feel for the guys from Vitality and ENCE, but I'm sorry, you're just playing like Team Liquid was last year in an era of an unbelievably good Counter-Strike team. The only event, as I said, that they beat Team Liquid, it was a smaller event without the big stage setup. And remember, the two revelations for Vitality is ZywOo as an individual player, unbelievably good, better than he should be at this point, and Alex as an in-game leader, also better than he should be at this point as an in-game leader. So inexperienced. They haven't played many huge stage setup finals. So when you put them in these scenarios in big playoff matches, they aren't always going to be able to come up with the goods, and they shouldn't be expected to. That's unreasonable. It reminds me of when famously all the fans who hated Simple, especially all the Brazilian fans, flamed him after that ESL 1 Cologne 2016 final. Were a guy who I think at the time was 17 years old, hard carried an NA team to a major final, never happened before, and then got dumped into well and final. They were all like, how can he be that good if he lost in the final? It's like, motherfucker, is he supposed to just win everything? He's supposed to just do it all? Like, what is this shit? Like, he's not literally Jesus. You know he's a human being, right? Like, the expectations can be ridiculous. You've got to put it in context sometimes. So then you get to the final, what should have been the most challenging match, right? Except, and I've told people this before, told them on many occasions, this ENCE team wants no motherfucking part of this Team Liquid team. Because this ENCE team, it isn't the ENCE and Team Liquid from the major, mate. A lot has changed since then, and it's all shifted heavily in the favour of Team Liquid. This was the most dominant best of 5, maybe the most dominant final. I mean, best of 3 ones are obviously easier to dominate. The most dominant best of 5 final ever seen in CSGO. Unbelievable, especially at the top level. Number 1 and number 3 teams in the world playing. 2 of ENCE's top 4 maps by win rate over the last 6 months were the first 2 maps they played. It was obviously Nuke and Overpass. And they couldn't get a single map in the whole series. They couldn't win either of these maps. In fact, on those 2 maps, 2 of their top 4 maps by win rate on LAN, they only managed to get 5 rounds total across both maps. Inferno was close, but it didn't matter in the end. I mean, and even then, to get it close took winning clutches, took winning miracle entries, pistol rounds, and that was just to give them a chance, which they in the end couldn't convert. The problem is, ENCE is a very good Counter-Strike team, but first of all, I think personally they've been hit by the org nerf. Secondly, I think generally they had a firepower issue anyway against teams like Team Liquid, who are unbelievably skilled, maybe the most skilled 5-man lineup to ever play Counter-Strike. So the problem is, ENCE already has firepower issues, but in a different way to Vitality. Because Vitality has the big gun. They have ZywOo, who could be the best player of the whole server, although he hasn't done yet against Team Liquid. ENCE, they have a smaller star in Sergey, who's not going to be like ZywOo. But the problem is, the lineup in ENCE, in terms of man for man, is supposed to be more skilled than Vitality. But at the moment, they're not all in that good form. Like, Ariel completely disappeared ever since he won that Blast Madrid MVP, which puts huge pressure on Sergey after frag, and he's also a very young guy, and he isn't Ziwu, he isn't simple. It's unreasonable to expect him to be at that simple Nico Ziwu level. Like, he's just a very good young player who's developing and might be a couple of years from being one of those superstar names, but he isn't now. He's not a prodigy in the same way. Then you have the Org nerf. I think if you look at the CT sides, it hurt them. They were so good at positioning. They could use their team play to beat teams that had better gun skills in them because the Org was so powerful, especially stationary, just spraying into a certain spots. They had loads of good two-man setups. Those just don't work with an M4. You see, X7 just doesn't have the same kind of impact that he did when he had an Org. Whereas he might get those 2 kills with a, fucking fadeaway spray with the Org, he's going to get the first kill with the M4 and then probably just die on the second one where the guy runs out with an AK. So it's understandable why they would be hurt skill-wise. They already slightly lacked a bit of skill anyway. So for me, the Org nerf hurt 2 teams the most because 2 teams with a similar set of strengths. And it was Ents and it was Renegades. Now, they're both less skilled than the other elite teams in the world. They both have good team play. They both have strong tactics. The problem is the skill differential's the problem, and the Org was making up for that. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of torn on whether the Org nerf was right. I'd have preferred they just made it more expensive and therefore made managing your economy a premium if you were one of those teams. I think that would be fairer personally. Maybe do something different with the win-loss bonus to edge things out in that respect. And also you have to add in Ents is another team that has their whole motherfucking map pool covered by Team Liquid, especially because in their case, Ents' best map is Train, which is Team Liquid's permaban, and Team Liquid not only is willing to play vertical, they've won all 5 times they've played it, so Ents has to permaban that still, and can't float it and ban something like Overpass or something along those lines that they don't want to have to play against the Team Liquid guys. I know everyone before, when I tweeted before the final, that because of these factors, Team Liquid would be a favourite on every map. I had loads of people tell me, no, what about Nuke? Ents is a favourite on Nuke. Look, they're on a 9-game winning streak. 7 of those 9 games were before the Org nerf. It's a CT-sided map. They relied on some of those CT rounds with the Org to be able to win those 9 games. So as a result, I didn't expect that at all. You've got to put records in context and look at what happened between those games, not just look at the 9 games as though they're all uniform and exactly the same and identical. They aren't. So the problem is, Ents is still a top team, but I personally think with what I've seen the last couple of tournaments, they came last place in Cologne, obviously, I actually think they're going to drop off a bit and just be a top 5 team. They could still occasionally possibly win a tournament. They didn't win that many tournaments before anyway. I don't think they'll be an event winner from here on out. I think they'll just make some nice semis, occasional final. They'll be a solid team. I'll cheer for them. I like watching them play. I think they have a very entertaining style of play. I think it's brilliant, the story of Alexi B, of Sergey, of Alu coming home, of people developing who were nobodies before. The problem is they're just not the best team and they don't look primed to be. And the team that is number 1 right now seriously covers them. And then who's number 2? Vitality, who's gotten in that ass against Ents the last couple of times. So Ents in a tough spot at number 3 right now. Astrala's probably getting stronger. Some other team's going to change lineups. Na'Vi maybe going to get better. I see them kind of dropping off to number 5 in the next few months. Now, Team Liquid as a team, let's just talk about these motherfuckers. I know I'm going to be making more of these videos, so let's do it, shall we? Okay, as a team in terms of skill, they are the most skilled that I've ever seen play CSGO in terms of active skill, actually in the server, what they can do. It's unbelievable levels of fragging. It's unfair. It should feel unfair that every member of the team can have these top frag games, can have big ADR, can have impact on the match. And at the same time, that's the key thing, they'll have like 3 players go off at once. Reminds me of Astralis last year. I think the style, along with the skill, is elevating the fragging. The clutching is fucking bonkers. Another thing that reminds me of last year's Astralis is they are the only team, aside from that Astralis team I've ever seen, where it doesn't matter what 2 players are left in a 2v3, a 2v4, 2v5, it feels possible. Now, I used to joke when they had the bad G2 lineup last year, if that was fucking Smiths and Body with a 2 alive in a 2v4, I knew the round was over already. With this team, even pick the players who were on paper the worst players. That would be what? Nitro, Stewie 2K. Put Nitro and Stewie 2K in a 2v4. I've seen him win them before. It feels possible. Nitro's winning fucking clutches, boy. He's a big time player. So then you go to the role versatility, also seems absolutely unfair. Like, the amount of bullshit rounds Nitro gets with an AWP, where he either just kills 3 or 4 people who rush him as though he was fucking Ziwu, or he just frags out and wins a clutch like a 1v2, 1v3. And he's supposed to be the in-game leader. He's supposed to be the worst player of the team, and he's doing that shit. And he can entry, and he can up. Like, fucking hell, the role diversity is just unfair. So the Team Liquid era, it was already started, but it continues unabated. Now won another event. I think they've now won something like 5 events in a row. Let me think. Because CS Summit was the one they didn't. They've obviously won 5 Grand Slam events, but that's different. They won the Blast LA, etc. But for me, don't worry about people who are slow to come on board. I can tell you how eras work. That people who are fans of the other teams, especially the last team that was on top, always are the ones most resistant. But what happens is, over time, they're all won over by the accomplishments, more wins, more victories, more dominance, more titles, a major. Eventually, they'll all be won over. And by the way, when they're all won over, they'll all retcon history and deny they ever said the team weren't the best, that they weren't the one. They'll make it seem like it was as much of a fact as the sun rising and setting, that, hey, everyone knew that, right? That's why I always joke. People tell me in the moment, now I don't know anything about Counter-Strike. And then when they explain their thoughts, half the things they explain, the principles they state and the concepts they outline are my motherfucking concepts and paradigm of thinking about Counter-Strike that I invented over the last 19 years. Like, it's hilarious how people will do that, right? Use my own points against me and then make out like they made them up or they understood them. Yeah, you understood because I told you, motherfucker. Sit the fuck down. So the era continues, and quite frankly, what I love now is just like Astralis in the second half of last year, now is the phase where you just make all the excuses go away one by one until how can they even argue against you? So if the org was still powerful, people would have said, nah, it's just because the org's powerful. Well, guess what? The org fell off. Team Liquid's even better than they were when the org was strong. Then they could say, but what about this one team that beat you? So Vitality had beaten them before Cologne, right? Yeah, they'd beaten Vitality the next 2 times after that, including a best of 5. This is ridiculous. All the teams were at these tournaments. Astralis was at the last 2 events recently that Liquid was at. Only played them once, couldn't even stop them, couldn't get to the final once. Ensign Vitality were a whole bunch of these events, and they're the number 3 and number 2 teams in the world in terms of ranking. The key thing for me with Team Liquid, another crazy thing like Astralis last year, is they have no rivals. Nobody can beat them consistently or even look like they should beat them. Hence why the G2 angle is one I played up and I'm kind of hopefully looking towards, but I don't necessarily expect, because obviously they're not actually overall that good a team. You can't complain about like teams haven't done roster moves like they tried to last year with Astralis, because guess what? Astralis was dominant for so long, eventually everyone had done a roster move. It's the same with this team. While they've been waiting around, every motherfucker's doing a roster move. It hasn't stopped them. Plenty have happened. So they're going not only for a great era for the major, they're going for the best year ever as well. They've been in every final except the major, basically. I think they've been in something like, 9 or 10 finals. Is unbelievable shit right now. They're on a streak of 9 finals in a row, which is second only to the NIP, which began CSGO with like 15 finals in a row, and some of those were bomb-ass events compared to what Liquid's done. This is better than Astralis. This is better than Fnatic. This is better than SK and Luminati. This is already some epic, all-time great shit. This Team Liquid lineup right now, I'll say this, and obviously don't go crazy, but in some tragic scenario where they were all just killed in a plane crash tomorrow, they don't need to play another map of Counter-Strike, and they would be a top 10 lineup of all time in CSGO. Probably even top 5, maybe. That one's more questionable because they haven't won a major. They haven't even gone deep in a major with this 5-man lineup, so that's why that's one I'm maybe holding off on. But they'd already be top 10 with what they've accomplished, the records they've broken, and the shit that they're doing right now, and the eye test tells you like a motherfucker, right? Then add in their map pool. This team's going to be dominant for a long time, boys. Because right now, they don't play trade, it's a permaban. They play all 6 other maps, and they have a winning record, a good winning record on all of them. Their worst map by winning record is Dust 2, where they are a 69.6% win rate. Every other map is 70% or higher. Every other map in the fucking pool. Now, yes, the eye test tells you, is their nuke or Inferno that godlike? The fucking win rate tells you they spank that ass. They so rarely ever lose series. They don't even lose that many maps overall. This team is unbelievably good. People actually, believe it or not, until the moment they won Cologne, there was a lot of people trying to argue against this team. They weren't looking at the fucking stats. I wonder if they were using the eye test properly, because this team already was... if we watched them play and then you looked at the records and the stats, it screamed dominant team, era incoming, buckle the fuck down. But as usual, I have to get there before all you guys, so I can tell you all this shit, so you can then hear my thoughts. Eventually they register, and then you can tell me them back years later as well. They were your thoughts, right? Let's let the cycle continue for a 20th year in the row. Technically be a 19th. I'm still on my 18th and a half or something ridiculous. Now, here's the thing. That's actually having 6 maps with a winner like that, beyond even Astralis. Like, Astralis at least had some maps that would be close to a 50% win rate, or, they'd lose like 2 or 3 in a row on one of them. Now, Astralis could have actually been better than Liquid even here, because Astralis actually could play cash their permaban. So they could have flexed to all 7. They just chose not to because they didn't need to. I don't think personally that Liquid's going to play Train. What's the point? Especially because Vertigo's a map people aren't playing much, but the 5 times Liquid's played it, they've won all 5. So right now, they are so locked in to win that they should, in theory, win every tournament they attend now. There is no reason they shouldn't at this moment. And as a result, I'll make a whole separate video on this, but they are the biggest favourite heading into a major that has ever existed in CSGO history. Now, I'll very briefly just say that's because other big favourites always had a loss coming in. So the one that didn't was Fnatic 2016, the one that won 6 events in a row. But if you've ever seen my video, they weren't all 6 big events. Not all of them were that crazy. And then it turned out all of Meister had an injury, right? Then you have Astralis. They won 2 majors with the last lineup, right? Well, the first one, Face It London, they just lost DreamHack Stockholm to fucking North before in 2 series, so they weren't as big a favourite as Team Liquid is now. Then you go to Katowice, they just lost iBuy Power Masters to Team Liquid in the final there. This team is winning everything and is going to come in on something like 5 events won in a row and like 6 of the last 7 or something mental, and then being in every final except the major. So they are insane. Like, no one's a lock to win the major because obviously you can just go ahead and not win it. It's a sport that can happen. But they are the closest to a lock you will ever fucking see. The only team I'll reference that maybe could be compared is maybe the envious team before DreamHack Cluj-Napoca. And if you know the behind the scenes of that, it was nowhere near like that. It's just that the record showed they had a load of finals and won a load of big titles. But even then, I don't think as dominant as Team Liquid is now. So what an unbelievable team. An absolute pleasure to watch them play. Obviously, kind of a bit satisfying for me since I did tell you OllieJ was the fucking chosen one of NA and everyone told me no, it's Stewie2K. We know Stewie2K is a very good player and he's contributing a lot to this team. OllieJ is a motherfucker though. That guy is the MVP of this tournament. If you look at the last few months, if you want to say Simple's the best player in the world, or maybe you think it's Zero, I'll say pick between the two of you which you want 1 and 2. I don't mind. But number 3 is OllieJ, and that's pretty clear to me. What an amazing fragger, what an all-around game, and he does more than just the scoreboard. He helps the communication, he sets the game up right, he gets the correct angles, holds the game intelligently. This is a very, very smart player who, for me, is the best player on this squad, and this is a team where Twists frags the fuck out as well. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, NateDOhDoubleG, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Wendelful, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Daniel Olivar, Chi Mao, JDubs, Kolja G, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion and weixz. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA. Do you want teasers or who the guests are for my upcoming videos? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly donate a discussion with me. Well, all of these perks and more are available at the Patreon link in the description box below.